So next session this morning is a pretty topical one, managing consumer expectations of agriculture. In a feeling that's common to conference organisers everywhere, I had a phone message this morning from Sarah Ferguson. So unfortunately Sarah's son broke his arm yesterday, which is the second time, and he's had to go to emergency surgery this morning. And so she unfortunately is unable to be with us. She sends profuse apologies. She's tried to get someone from ABC Queensland to fill in for her. She's said that she'll send her presentation with all the notes she had available to it for us to circulate. But unfortunately, and I know some people were in particular interested in hearing from Sarah on a number of issues around the live cattle exports. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to make that come to fruition at this stage, and my apologies to those of you that were hoping for that opportunity. That said, I don't think it detracts at all from the issue more generally that confronts agriculture in this regard, and I think we have two very excellent presenters who are going to discuss some aspects of it. So just by way of introduction, our second session this morning deals with what is perhaps one of the greatest challenges facing the agriculture sector in Australia, and indeed the agriculture sectors of most developed nations. The famous psychologist Abraham Maslow observed some 70 years ago that humans have a hierarchy of needs, and that as wealth increases, so does the nature of those needs. This is exactly what we are seeing played out in developed economies at the moment, as consumers who are spending decreasing proportions of their total income on food become more particular about what is referred to as the provenance of that food. This encompasses issues such as the nature of the production systems, the input used in those systems, the impacts of those systems on the environment, the effect of that system on animals, and even the conditions under which people are employed under in that system. Simultaneously with the emergence of these issues amongst consumers, the world has also experienced a digital and communications revolution. Images, sounds and video can be instantly transmitted worldwide, and any person in the world now can be a broadcaster, expounding their views and observations to a potentially unlimited global audience. In the past, much of what happened in agriculture was essentially out of sight and out of mind, and consumers were happy if there was plenty of good quality fresh food available. This is no longer the case, and it is fair to say that Australian agriculture is struggling to deal with the new transparency in combination with heightened consumer expectations. I guess we're all quite aware that the backdrop of most recent times to this issue is the live cattle exports to Indonesia issue, which emerged in the middle of last year and resulted in the ban or suspension of that trade in early June, and its very problematical re-establishment a month later, and the issues that have emerged quite regularly since then. It's interesting to talk to some of those more intimately involved in some of those issues, and these are some of the comments Sarah might have made as well. The actual Four Corners program, A Bloody Business, which went to air that Monday night, was the lowest rating Four Corners program for the year to date. So the least number of people watched that program of any Four Corners program, as far as I know, up until the present time. So in some respects that indicated that the issue was probably not one that people would say, goody, let's go and sit down in front of the TV at 8:30 and watch this footage about the live cattle trade. Obviously X Factor or something else were a lot more attractive. But the interesting bit is that two organisations in particular had very well organised internet campaigns ready to start the minute that program finished airing. Those campaigns effectively did three things. One is they said, here's a link to the footage, you should look at this. And that footage became the most downloaded program that the ABC has experienced over recent times. The second thing is that internet campaign or email campaign said, click this link, add your name and your town, and you will instantaneously send a message to all 230 federal politicians saying that you want this trade stopped. And of course the third thing that link said, oh, by the way, if you support us, click here to donate. So very simple, very slick, instant messaging to every single federal politician, and that was how those two campaigns by those two organisations run. Within, and I may be incorrect here on the detail, but certainly the impression I gained from some of the ministerial officers is that within half a day, that is by lunchtime on the Tuesday, some of them had received up to 10,000 emails. And within several days, most of them had received more than 20,000 emails. And I think those who follow this story probably know the events that followed on from that. A bunch of about 20 backbenchers marched into the Minister's office and demanded an urgent stop to the trade. The Minister had to struggle with that. Meanwhile, the industry struggled to put together a communication or put together a message or respond to that. And I guess the rest, they say, is history. So I thought it would be useful. I know Sarah would have gone into a lot more detail and provided a lot more context to the reasons that they ran that story, and I know that a lot of you were interested in an active discussion with Sarah, and perhaps the potential will come again to do that. But I still think it's useful that we understand that's the nature of the beast, so to speak, that the sector is dealing with in terms of this issue of consumer expectations and what the digital age enables in terms of those consumers' reactions to those sorts of issues. So I guess I think that's a useful backdrop to our two speakers who are going to do presentations for us today. So the first is Tim Powell, who's the Managing Director of Cox Inall Communications and Cox Inall Ridgeway. There's probably seeming to be a bit of a bias here, but Tim is yet another example of the quality of people involved in agriculture who hail from southern New South Wales, having grown up near Tumbarumba, east of Wagga. Tim holds a Bachelor of Arts in Rural Journalism from Curtin University of Technology and a Master of Public Affairs from University of Sydney. His career has included employment with the Rural Press Group for 7 years and as a journalist and media advisor to Premier John Fahey during his time as Premier of New South Wales. Since 1996, Tim has worked with Cox Inall Communications, arguably Australia's leading rural communications organisation. He took on the role of Managing Director in 2002 and remains a hands-on consultant working on specific projects in both Cox Inall and Cox Inall Ridgeway. Cox Inall Ridgeway, by the way, is a communications organisation that specialises in communications for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Tim is an experienced crisis manager and sits on the crisis team of Kimberley-Clark in Australia, as well as providing crisis management advice and training to a number of manufacturing and life science companies. I'm sure Tim will provide us with some important insights into the digital revolution and its implications for agriculture in Australia in the future. So please welcome Tim Cox.
I'm up at 7, the sunrise gives me a glimpse of heaven. I get right to work, a farmer's life can be a little berserk, yeah. This is how I roll, I feed the cattle till their stomachs are full. Treat them right, that's my belief. What's for dinner? I say beef.
Gotta feed everybody. Gotta feed everybody. Gotta feed everybody.
I work out. Side.
Gotta feed everybody. Gotta feed everybody. Gotta feed everybody.
I work out.
Side. When I step to the bunk,
Yeah.
this is what I see. All the hungry cattle are staring at me. I got passion for my plans and I ain't afraid to show it. Show it, show it, show it.
I'm farming and I grow it.
Okay. Who hasn't seen that before? Okay, that's a pretty corny YouTube hit put together by three farming brothers from Kansas in the US. 7.5 million views in 4 months. I think what that shows is, with a little bit of creativity, that agriculture can be engaging online. And you might look at that and say, well, what does that say? There's a lot of subliminal messages in that about the power of farming. And if you have a look at the comments on the YouTube site, where the website hits, the comments are everything from, you know, I hate farmers, I should let the cows go, through to those guys are hard. But the key point is people are engaged and they're sharing that little piece of social media. So one of the messages I wanted to get across to you today is that if agriculture does want to engage online, we're going to have to forget some of the ways we've communicated in the past and do things differently. Mick asked me to talk about how social media campaigns are put together, and I'm going to do that by focusing on 2 case studies. I'm not going to talk about the live sheep incident because, on the assumption that Sarah would be here, I figured she would give it a fair bit of airing. But what I am going to talk about is the super trawler, which is an excellent open and shut case study because it had a beginning and an end. And I'm also going to talk about the Make It Possible campaign that Animals Australia is running at the moment, and it's pretty much related to live sheep as well. Now, the thing about these 2 case studies, which is one of the lessons I want us to think about, is they've got somebody else to pay for them. They're really sophisticated campaigns that somebody else paid for it, and we're about to learn how. I love the super trawler campaign because it was so over the top and the government's response to it was so pathetic, and because it was successful. So from a piece of political influence, it really, really did work. And not only did it get somebody else to pay for it, and that was Get Up givers, it used over-the-top imagery to stir the community into action. And Jackson, could I have that first slide, please? And the campaign had everything that agriculture and agribusiness struggles to deliver. And that's about unity of message. Because this had a great rallying cry, and it's really simple. Stop the super trawler. It has that sense of urgency, that fear that something really bad is going to happen unless we all get off our bums and do something. That's the sort of campaigning that is very hard to get agriculture to do. And the coalition of 11 environment groups that put this together, it was led by Environment Tasmania, were very clear on what their messages were in the imagery they used. And if you have a look at that shot of the dolphins in the net, basically they were saying, if we unleash this super trawler upon our oceans, dolphins and seals are going to die. They'll be decimated. An absolute, total scientific lie. But the imagery worked and got people motivated. So another point I wanted to make is social media isn't just about communicating a message to external audiences. It's really about rallying your own troops, getting them angry, feeding them slogans, getting them to donate money, because that's how the Greens work. That's how Get Up works. And interestingly, in agriculture, I'm pretty heavily involved. I'm the president of the Australian Council of Agricultural Journalists. I've got an Ag College alumni. I've got family farming in the Riverina. But I have never, ever been asked to kick the can for a campaign on behalf of agriculture. So that got me thinking about what a great untapped resource people like me who live in the suburbs but probably got some empathy for agriculture are if only we were asked to kick the can. And that requires a campaign infrastructure, which I'll come back to. Because, Mick, perhaps Australian agriculture needs to hire Get Up as its fundraising arm. Last year, Get Up raised $3 million at an average of $20 per donor, and it claims 250,000 members. Has anybody got on the Get Up website and had a good look at it? A few nods. If you haven't, I thoroughly recommend you do, because you'll probably learn more about social media campaigning by just digging around on that site than what you'll hear from me today. But the core of that, and that's why it's so clever, is it uses outrage to get people to donate. Little bits of money, 20 bucks on average, raises 3 million that can be deployed in campaigns. And that 250,000 people have probably joined Get Up for different reasons. They campaign about equality in marriage, they campaign about Julian Assange, the bugger who skipped bail and burnt through about £3 million worth of donors' money, I might add. So people probably join for different reasons, and what you get is a menu of campaigns that you might want to opt into. Because every time they campaign on something, out goes an email, please give. So apart from backing the Super Trawler campaign, GetUp's now raising money targeting live animal exports. So the loop goes on. We've got an audience, they're motivated, let's put another campaign in front of them. So I think there could be another model similar to this for agriculture. And if we believe the Australian Farm Institute's, I think it was your first research study, Mick, that 14% of all employment in Australia is reliant on agriculture in some shape or form, surely it can't be that hard to get a community of interest that's interested in agriculture in general terms to give. I've even got a name for it, Georgie. We could call it Eat Up. For the Super Trawler campaign, Get Up raised the funds to run, that image at the bottom of the screen is the actual ad that ran in the Australian newspaper. So they raised the money to pay for that advertisement and some of the other campaign activities. I think I can click. And you can see the way the campaign was laid out. Classic clicktivism. Create a photo message, sign and share the petition, share the website via Facebook, via Twitter and via Google+. Get involved. There were some physical events. They wanted you to register a local event and write a letter to a local editor or to callback radio. All this is done on a relatively low-cost WordPress website, and WordPress is easy to use. Social tools just fit together like jigsaw puzzles. So not an expensive campaign. I think the other observation to make about social media is it's not a campaign in itself. It's a great tool and an integrated mix. And here, the Super Trawler campaign, which was run out of Tasmania in partnership with Get Up, did a lot of real-world events. They had a National Day of Action on August 11, when they had 400 boats involved. By August 15, this is this year, they had 35,000 signatures delivered to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, and those signatures were delivered as little fish in a great little paper fish in a great big net. So another stunt, another image to show campaign progress, to keep the supporters happy that we're actually doing something. By September 4, this is less than a month later, Tony Burke had intervened and announced that he would change the EP, Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Control Act, to push out the Super Trawler for 2 years, find a scientific reason why we couldn't run it. And by September 13, that bill had been through the Parliament. That is just gobsmacking that in a month and a half, it's good night Irene for the Super Trawler and for the money those investors put into that food security enhancing device to bring it to Australia. So it begs the question, what was industry's response to that campaign? And I hope I've given you a flavour of how it worked. Is anybody here from AFMA? Good. I tried to find some good arguments on behalf of industry on the AFMA website, the regulator, the scientific body. There's 18 screens of FAQs and I'm still none the wiser. Seafish Tasmania, who were the company behind the Super Trawler, they were a bit clearer, but there was no knockout message. I'm warming up to an idea, just to give you an idea about social media thinking. So while Tony Burke was finding a way to sink the Super Trawler, the other side of the story pretty much went untold. Sure, they got out and did some media and they made some direct representations to government, but from a social media perspective, there was no story. And you know what? I reckon there is a winning argument that you might have used on behalf of the Super Trawler. See, the Super Trawler was taking no more or less mackerel than a fleet of small trawlers would have otherwise done. 18,000 tonnes out of a fishery with a sustainable quota of 36,000 tonnes. That's a fact. And monitoring shows that the bycatch, Seafish Tasmania's historical performance is less than 1% of what they catch. And this boat was going to have the best bycatch release devices that any boat had ever had. So if a dolphin or a seal did end up in it, out the back, away she goes. Had underwater cameras, had onboard observers. It was the bee's knees and the duck's whiskers, or the cat's whiskers. not the duck's nuts. And moreover, because it was a big boat, it was fishing far, far out to sea, away from where seals and dolphins hang out in fresh fishing grounds. But here's the thing. This is the line I, in 100% hindsight, might have gone with. Because this is a bait fish fishery, and for the first time, it was going to be harvested for human consumption. That's right, these jack mackerel, instead of becoming fish food, which is what they normally would be, because the super trawler had the capacity to process, freeze and store on board, they were going to human consumption in West Africa. So we've just let the Greens go and rip nourishing seafood from the hands of starving people in Africa. That's the message. That's how you win a social media argument. It's all about emotion. It ain't about the facts. Well, that is actually factually true, by the way. But I know you think, oh, well, that's just spin. That's the sort of spin you'd use in any campaign. But it's not. It's about pushing emotional buttons and getting people to buy into that sort of an argument. And you know, we know that social media works best when it pushes our emotional buttons. The seafood industry's defence campaign just couldn't compete with the slickness, the energy, the resources and the emotion of the environment group's campaign. So the campaign was successful. The Greens got what they want, and if you look at Environment Tasmania's website, you can see them chortling away. They're very pleased with themselves. It worked because they got social media to fund for the campaign. Get Up Givers funded that. Mums and dads and people who think it's a jolly good idea. People like my wife, who I cannot win this argument over the kitchen table about how the super trawler was actually a more sustainable option for the Australian fishing industry. I've given up because I love my wife and I want to remain married to her. It tapped into Get Up's base of 250,000 supporters. He created content that was easily to share via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or by Google+. It had a clear message that rallied their own troops. Stop the super trawler. Do it now. Not some sort of ponderous agriculture campaign about, you know, we better not do this. It's do it now. And it had an online petition to frighten the politicians. Now, Mick threw around some numbers. That campaign claimed, by the time they shut down the campaign, they had 100,000 signatures in 4 months. That's the sort of numbers that do frighten politicians, particularly some of the ones we've got at the minute who tend to be rather easily frightened. So the industry side of the argument, and respect to those who've worked very, very hard on that campaign, but best I could find in a retrospective research, it was pretty much about mainstream media, direct representation to government. You know, it was like a suburban rugby team taking on the All Blacks. It was always going to be ugly, and they got the result. Let me just move on to a different type of campaign. Now, these campaigns are very different in strategic intent. You can see that the Stop the Super Trawler one was about direct action, about putting the heat on two ministers, Ludwig and Burke, and it was successful. That's one style of campaign. This is completely different. Make It Possible is about focusing on supermarkets, and I know there's been some chatter in the breaks about this, to change consumer behaviour and drive pressure down the supply chain to change practice on farm. So you need a very different style of campaign, and I'll just quickly run through how that is different. But also introduce a couple of different celebrity endorsements. We talked about the fundraising. This brings in celebrity endorsement as a campaign element. You don't need it for every campaign, but it works for this. The centrepiece is a heart-wrenching TV and cinema advertisement that's playing out now. I haven't actually seen it on TV, but I've seen it playing out on news websites. It uses animals' voices to plead its own case. It is very hard not to watch and be moved by. The campaign has lots of other elements. It asks participants to vote with their trolley, and I'll just quickly read through some of the actions. When doing your food shopping, make kind choices. Avoid factory farmed, buy fewer animal products, or even go meat-free. It asks you to make a donation. Make a one-off donation, or why not become a monthly donor? It's a bit like the Catholic Church, really, Mick. And I'll come back to that. Get the action pack. You can get the action, the Make It Possible action pack. It costs $12. You actually pay, as a supporter, you're paying again. You're putting your hand in the pocket again. That's not how farm organisations work. They ask you to give your time, but they kind of look after you elsewhere. You can buy merchandise. You can buy the fluffy little pig. You can buy an iPhone cover. You can buy all sorts of stuff. It's all driven to getting people engaged in the campaign, raising more money. It gives you directions on how to spread the word. It also gives very precise instructions on how to lobby your supermarket. And I quote, "Next time you're in your local supermarket, fill out a customer feedback form asking them to no longer stock cage eggs or other factory farm products. Alternatively, send them an email or give them a call when you have a chance at home." So it's really about ramping up the pressure on the supermarkets time and time again. That campaign already, I think it's been on air for about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, has 65,000 pledges. So it's building and building. Like the Super Trawler campaign, it's got a clear call to action. And you'll see the celebrities, if you click on the website later on, the celebrities all use this same phrase: "We believe in a world without factory farming." It's almost spiritual, isn't it? We believe. It's that emotional tug thing again. That was the crack about the Catholic Church, Mick. I wasn't denigrating your religion, being a Keo and all. It uses Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Shareability is a big feature. Make a pledge, donate some money. It's all classic clicktivism. You know, sit on your bum in your suburban house and click a mouse, and I've done my good deed for the day. Now I can go and drive my four-wheel drive around and ruin the atmosphere with greenhouse gases. It's exercising middle-class guilt with one click of a mouse button. But geez, it works, and it's going to have to change the way we operate in agriculture. Not only did this campaign raise a lot of money and to buy some space on cinema advertising and on TV, it also got a big city ad agency to make the ad. And that ad would have been very expensive to make because it's got fantastic digital animation, getting the animals to talk. When was the last time that agriculture seriously engaged with Australia's creative community? I run a PR agency. We're part of a big city ad agency. I've never heard them being asked to do something pro bono for agriculture. And you know what? If you ask them, they probably do it. So let's get some hipsters and sneakers working for agriculture pro bono. We've just got to get the pitch right. We need a macro message that they can buy into, that everybody can buy into. And I don't know what that is, Georgie, but I imagine it's something about food security or farming as a cultural icon, the way the French do it, or keeping families on the farm. There has to be a big picture message that we can get people to buy into, that perhaps particular campaigns work underneath it. Because we know the relentless pressure from campaigns like this do work. Coles has already pledged to be sow stall free for the entire range of home brand pork, bacon and ham by 2013, next year. A similar commitment has been made regarding their own brand cage eggs. Woolworths is committed to phase out sow stalls similarly and reducing all cage egg lines while removing its own brand cage eggs altogether. So, you know, this campaign is just getting some steam. It's already had an effect. Mick did ask me a little bit about what agriculture should do, and I'll come back to some strategic recommendations. But some little tactical things is, you probably saw Rove McManus at the front slide, other celebrities endorsing this campaign, people like Missy Higgins, the musician, Michelle Bridges, the fitness chick who's on TV. If you want to put a bit of pressure on these campaigns, I would, for this particular one, I'd be going after the celebrities. If you look at somebody like Michelle Bridges, who's trying to run an online business spun out of a media career, and I'm sure she's a very lovely woman, but she would not want to get into a messy Twitter debate with some angry farm mums saying, Michelle, you're putting us out of business. So the way you play in social media is a little bit different as well, and I reckon with a bit of pressure, some of those celebs would back away from this campaign. It just causes a bit of disruption, makes it harder for the get-ups of this world to get on and do their job. And just as an aside, I know I shouldn't use sporting analogies all the time, but I noticed that Peter Siddle, the Australian fast bowler, has a new girlfriend who's turned him into a vegan. And Peter's now popped up on the Make It Possible campaign. He's one of the celebs on the front page of the website, voicing the words. Now, my piece of advice to Peter is, having watched him bowl in the Brisbane Test, is, mate, ditch the girlfriend, get back in the stake and bowl fast for Australia. I think we need to acknowledge there are some good things going on in agriculture. It's not like the people in this room and the organisations you run and work for aren't doing anything. You are doing stuff and things are changing. I guess the challenge from Georgie and I is how can we ramp things up, and is it actually worthwhile doing? Strategically, is there any benefit to agriculture to having a general social media type presence? So to acknowledge Target 100, this is an MLA campaign. It's really interesting because it links what happens on the farm from a sustainability perspective to what happens on the plate. So it's everything from what Grazie's doing through to recipes. It's got a dietitian who's got various food allergies and various things who talks about all that sort of stuff. So it's a really nice, feel-good site. It's got a number of followers, not huge, but it's kind of building. You know, that's industry specific. Is there something we could do across all industries that's like that? The NFF battles on manfully with almost zero resources. They're out there, they're tweeting, they've got their Facebook page, they're trying to do their bit. It's very news-based. Ag Chat Oz, which I think Georgie might have a bit of a chat about, is an excellent way to debate issues and ideas and bring in a new audience. And if those of you who aren't big Twitter users or haven't followed Ag Chat Oz, every Tuesday night there's a debate, and it's quite remarkable what people can get across in 140 characters. And if we've got time, we might bring some of those tweets up just to have a look at them. There's a project called Art for Agriculture. It's a bit of a slow burner, but it's just made for social media, about engaging with school kids, about creating works of art about agriculture. And there's probably other examples in your industries, and apologies if I don't know about them or haven't mentioned them. I'll let others judge the effectiveness of the Year of the Farmer. So I've made some observations about social media and agriculture and what we might do, which is probably the more worthwhile discussion. And I'm deadly serious about this stuff, so I'm going to summarise it for you. Let's get a rolling fundraising vehicle in place that gathers up members and money from the bush, from regional towns and from the suburbs. It's going to be Eat Up for Agriculture. And that's going to get people like me sitting in my bum in the eastern suburbs of Sydney to assuage some of my middle class guilt by giving money to farming, because I'd like to do that. To give this focus, we need to give it a generic support farmers campaign that's got a real emotional tug. So it's not about fighting greenies in the public, because that's ugly. It's about making farmers as cute as a dolphin, a piglet and a koala all wrapped up together. And let's not get too factual and earnest, because we all fall into that trap. We've got to have some fun. If you ever look at the boys from Kansas, that's a rip-off of a popular song. I'm surprised they haven't been sued by Sony Music. But they get across the messages about those cattle look really happy and really well fed and really clean. Those boys look like they're having fun. That message, the silly poster of how many people in Kansas are farmer feeds, I bet you could do a survey in the States now and probably get some recall on that because of the way it was presented. So we need to have some fun. And we need to build this online community outside times of crisis. We need a reservoir of supporters and goodwill for when we need it, like when the balloon goes up over an animal welfare issue. To make this work, we need outstanding content, ideas, competitions, giveaways and merchandise. And all of this has to be shareable with one click. And doing this isn't somebody's job, it's everybody's job. We need to make this so it engages everybody in agriculture. And I think Georgie will talk about this, but I can see a lot of latent desire to do this. You see a lot of little farmer groups popping up, wanting to organise protests, got the Twitter group, got the Facebook group. It's happening out there, and a lot of people are putting a lot of time into it. We just need to support them, particularly from the fundraising side of things. We need to hang out with celebrities from music, the arts and sport. We need to get them on our side, not on the animal welfare side, or both. And we need to get Australia's creative community on our side by challenging them and involving them. If you can give an advertising agency creative freedom and they think they can win an award, away they go. They'll work for you for free so they can go to Cannes and get a gong. Believe me, they do. And we need to be authentic. A phrase you often hear about social media, and it's true. Have a look at a post made by a dairy farmer called Jane Burney on the Coles Facebook page on 27 July. It was a heartfelt rant about Coles' dairy policies and the impact on dairy farmers. That received 76,000 likes and 5,000 comments. That's just one dairy farmer's wife just had enough, got it off her chest. The problem with all this great thinking, of course, is we need someone or something to pull it all together. And that might be something we can have a chat about if we get time. I think the other one, and I look at the economists and scientists around the world, around the room, is like you, I've spent my life trying to communicate science. And I'm afraid science and rational thinking doesn't win a lot of debates anymore. It's about emotion. Social media and collectivism have made people more righteous, but it's also made them more vacuous and intellectually lazy. And I don't think agriculture can change that. Social media is here. It's going to dominate our lives. But I think we can change the way we campaign. Yes, we'll still need our good science and our economics to argue to policymakers. But when it comes to the digital generation, we need emotion. And as the boys from Kansas tell us, we've got to feed everybody, so we've got to do something about it. Thank you very much.